prices are going down. What I am saying is murder rates. They actually are going down.
Inflation is still
plateauing.
It is decreasing in rate, which is the entire goal.
But
of
are
the
prices
Federal
going
Reserve.
down or not? Just to be clear. No, they're not.
They are down from their sky high rates.
Yeah,
Actually,
no.
Let's move on. Next up for
we were just arguing over combat zones. I don't know where we are this morning.
You can argue.
You guys are trying to paint a picture of a country that doesn't exist.
I'm not painting anything. I'm painting. Stop talking. That's what I'm painting.
Over on CNN yesterday, the coverage of the outgoing Biden administration, the incoming Trump administration, and of course, the January 6th certification of the Electoral College, it created a bit of a perfect storm that required the one and only Scott Jennings to step in and speak truth to power. We have some beautiful nuggets of him pushing back on Van Jones and Adam Kinzinger. And finally, there's a clip of the CNN host, I think finally having a little bit too much Scott Jennings in her life. And she let the mask slip a little bit about what the anchors really think about Scott. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, here he is with Kinzinger.
Harris business. I think before we canonize St. Kamala here on the high holy day of January 6th. Let's remember the Electoral Count Reform Act of 2022 makes it perfectly clear that the vice president has nothing but purely ministerial duties on this day. She didn't actually certify the results of the election. That's done by the voters.
It was clear as day 4 years ago as well. Right. But because of the
that's the thing. I mean, nobody's trying to canonize her. The same thing was true.
Oh, they're not. She put out a video trying to canonize herself.
She was actually just saying it's unremarkable. That's true.
That's the opposite of
I want to actually congratulate the Democrats today. This is the first election since 1988. This is the first election since 1988 that a Republican won, and Democrats did not try to overturn the results on the floor of the Congress. So congratulations, Democrats.
I'm only interrupting you because we've heard this before.
We've played this. Well, you've heard the truth before, but I thought it was worth repeating.
Yeah, well, we've heard all that before. Oh, yeah, well, no one on CNN is saying it except for Jennings. In fact, Adam Kinzinger, didn't he used to be a Republican? You'd think that he would embrace that narrative too. That's right. Everybody getting so excited. See, this is how January 6th is supposed to happen. The vice president was there performing her ceremonial duty and gaveling things in, and that's it. Well, Jennings reminds everybody, yeah, that's because in 22, just 2 years ago, they passed a law that reduced the vice president's role to merely a ceremonial position. And Democrats, we're not election deniers. See, we didn't object. It's the first time you didn't object since 89. It's the first time you haven't objected to a Republican winning the Electoral College since parachute pants were in style. MC Hammer was playing on people's Walkmans as they were walking around outside the Capitol building the last time you guys were okay with the Electoral College results. So just shut up. Thank you, Scott Jennings, for pointing it out. He should have made the parachute pants reference. All right, a little bit more from CNN yesterday.
Yeah, I think it'll be remembered, but I don't think it's going to be remembered singularly. I think it's going to be remembered in the context of the last 8 years, 4 years of Trump, 4 years of Biden. I mean, the fact is it happened. It was a terrible day. Political violence should never be condoned. And then we lived through 4 years of Biden's presidency, and the American people went scrambling back to Donald Trump. They chose to analyze two presidencies, which included one day and a whole bunch of other policy decisions, and they went back to Trump.
All right, I'm going to let this finish. There's about another minute and a half here, but I just want to point out, you've got to, Adam Kinzinger, this is his job now. He's a CNN analyst. So sad. Adam Kinzinger led the charge. He killed his own political futures by sitting on that January 6th committee, not because the Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, wanted him on that committee. He was handpicked by Nancy Pelosi. He is a Nancy Pelosi approved kind of Republican. He's the kind of Republican that Nancy Pelosi goes out of her way to bring into the room and into the conversation about things. That should tell you what kind of Republican he is, right? His entire career now will be defined by his participation in the kangaroo committee that was known as the January 6th investigation. And here's Scott Jennings, right? This is what's so beautiful, is that they do the split screen. So Kinzinger's face basically just melts like he's at a funeral or something, or like he was one of the guys looking at the contents of the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark, because it's all disintegrating before his eyes. Because Scott Jennings is basically telling the truth here, saying, yeah, the American people heard what you had to say. It's how could we avoid what you had to say about January 6th? It's all we had for months, for a couple of years. All you had to talk about was January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. And when they finally had a chance to say something back to you, they said, go screw yourself. We want Trump. And Kinzinger has to listen to this. So watch his face as this entire thing unfolds. It's beautiful.
Other thing about this day and about this election that I think is noteworthy and actually positive is this. It's not been since 1988 that Democrats have not challenged a Republican win on the floor of the House when trying to count the votes. I've never had an election in my adult professional career in which both sides basically accepted it without too much grumbling. Obviously, 00 and 04, Democrats didn't accept Bush. There were Republicans who didn't accept Obama. We know Democrats still think Russia stole the election in 2016. We know what happened in 2020. This time around, it seems to me that most people have basically accepted the results of the election. Also, the Electoral Reform Count Act passed in 2022, clarifying that the vice president only has ministerial duty. So that's going to go off without a hitch today. It feels like maybe we've gotten off the slippery slope of one side or the other not accepting the outcome of an election. So in its totality over the last quarter century, I tend to think that's a good thing.
I think sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, look, I get it. And I agree that in the long run, I think that the days of, January 6th fights are probably going to be over. We did a great thing with the Electoral Count Act reform. But we have to be very careful. We can't put Democrats, and I was against them doing it when they did it, obviously, against Democrats opposing the election. We can't put that on the same level what happened on January 6th.
Yeah, we can't do that because then my entire legacy will be disintegrated. Okay, Adam. Meanwhile, a little bit more here. This is Van Jones again. And this conversation, by the way, has to do with, it goes beyond January 6th, and it really has to do with what we still need to know about Democrats covering up Joe Biden's decline. And I love that Jennings continues to push on this issue.
Next time.
Of course, to admit it now would be to effectively be admitting one of the biggest cover-ups in modern American political history. Democrat politicians lied. Democrat pundits lied. A lot of people who cover the White House looked the other way or believed absolute crap they were being fed by the White House press secretary.
I'm not disagreeing.
Cheap fakes.
Yeah.
So you think about the pantheon of people who were engaged in the lying, believing the lying, or the cover-up itself. To admit it now would be to say, you know what, America, we did try to pull the wool over your eyes and you weren't buying it. I mean, I guess I understand why keeping up the charade now to some degree, because to admit it now would be to admit this massive, huge cover-up.
And it would also be to, kick a guy when he's down. I think we live in the real world. And this is politics. He's not going to throw Joe Biden all the way under the bus at this stage.
Yeah, I think if that debate hadn't happened, Joe Biden would have probably still been at the top of the ticket in November. But that debate was telling. And I think anybody who watched it, we all were shocked. We were all also very sad and hurt. Mm-hmm. It was hard to watch someone who I've worked for
Me too.
Be in that condition. I'll also say I saw the president a month ago and he's like, where you been all day? It's like, so.
Yeah, good days and bad days.
Yeah, right. Next time.
I missed that last line there from Van Jones, but it is amazing to me to hear them still in some sort of a cognitive dissonance over what they all saw, what we all saw, what we were told by those same people sitting at that table were cheap fakes and lies about Joe Biden. And Scott Jennings says, this was a cover-up. It was a cover-up. At best, you willfully ignored this. At worst, it was the greatest political cover-up of our lifetimes. All right, real fast. By the end of the night, wait, was this end of the night or was this in the morning? Actually, now that I'm looking at it, this was in the morning. All right, well, it's one point. What's her name? Kate Bolduan? Is that her name? How do you pronounce her name?
Are you talking about the former the former White House comms director?
She's an anchor now at CNN. Well, you'll see who she is. She was obviously getting sick and tired of Scott Jennings, and she let the mask slip a little bit. Listen to her at the end here when she lashes out. She just wants Scott Jennings to shut up, which, it's interesting. You're an anchor, a host of a CNN show, and CNN is a paid analyst. His job is to give his opinion, but because he's truthful, he's fact-based, and you can't deny the obvious truths that he lays out there, the best thing you're reduced to is telling him to shut up.
In a political sense, is it how we got here? is interesting, and you can see the evolution. You can play all the sound bites from the days after when you heard Republicans blaming Donald Trump, some being short of saying he should be impeached, saying he should be held accountable. And 4 years later, we are here. It is a stunning political comeback attributed to how Trump played it afterward, how Democrats played it afterward, or something else?
Well, I think it's some mixture of everything. But to me, the big message is that in the United States, the people decide. And because of the disastrous 4 years that came after Donald Trump, the people decided to return Donald Trump to power. And that's fundamentally what happened. They looked at what happened on January the 6th. They looked at all the things Democrats claimed about Donald Trump. And they also analyzed every single decision that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris made. And they delivered Donald Trump a convincing victory 4 years later.
It is tough, though, Scott, because when you say the people decide, that's what people tried to make sure didn't happen on January 6th, was allowing the people to decide.
And the machinery turned. It was a terrible.
The lack of acknowledgement of how bad it was in the aftermath.
I mean, I think a great many people have acknowledged it, but also what happened that day. The machinery turned. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden became the president. He had one of the worst terms of any U.S. president, and then the people scrambled back to Donald Trump. That is the history of what happened.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I look at today, Donald Trump is inheriting one of the best economies that a president has inherited in a very long period of time. If you look at the fact that something like net migration at the border is lower than it.
I look at Jennings' face. He can barely even contain himself. Donald Trump is inheriting one of the best economies ever. Really, you would think if the economy was that great, the American people would have voted for 4 more years. I'm sorry, has the economy improved just in the last 6 weeks since Election Day? Is it, what did I miss exactly? Look at his face. The discipline that he must have to embody to not just laugh at this guy in his face by saying that. All right, they go back and forth for a while. I just want to skip ahead to the very end here, where they're going back and forth, and Jennings just keeps, laying out the facts for them. And then finally, Kate Bolduan, right? Isn't it Bolduan? I don't know how to pronounce her last name. She finally has had enough of Scott Jennings, being right.
What we're saying, though, is that prices are going down. What I am saying is murder rates.
Going down.
They actually are going down.
Inflation is still plateauing.
It is decreasing in rate, which is the entire goal.
But are prices going down or not? Just to be clear, no, they're not.
They are down from their sky high rates.
Yeah,
So again, I just want to jump in here. So he says prices are going down. No, they're not. Prices are still going up. They're just not going up as fast. The inflation rate is less, but inflation is inflation. Okay. So as the inflation used to be 9%, now it's 3%. Okay, so instead of prices going up 9%, they're going up 3%, but that's still 12% higher than before the inflation at all. So he says prices are going down. He's saying, no, they're not. And she's lying, basically. She says, well, sure they are. Prices are going down because inflation is lower, right? And so he just, look at Jennings' mouth. I love it. So that's what they're about to engage in here. And Jennings is right. And she can't handle it, so...
No. Let's move on. Next up for...
We were just arguing over combat zones. I don't know where we are this morning.
You can argue.
You guys are trying to paint a picture of a country that doesn't exist.
I'm not painting anything. I'm painting stop talking. That's what I'm painting. Scott.
Zip it, stop talking is the only way she can end the segment. That's a gorgeous thing, a beautiful thing. Even on a day like yesterday, CNN can't help but continue to try to lie to boost up the Biden-Harris presidency. I don't know why. It's over. Y'all lost. But thank God we've got Jennings there at the table to continue to fact check them in real time. So we're talking about increased tariffs right now on our trade partners, tax cuts, regulation changes. I want you to learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic right now more than ever. Birch Gold, the only company I endorse, they're releasing, only gold company I endorse. Let me just be clear on that. They're releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era, and they've got a foreword written by the aforementioned Donald Trump Jr. To get your free copy, along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold, just text my name, Larry, to 989898. The facts are the national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt continue to increase. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar, and Birch Gold is still the company I recommend to help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold, and that's not a penny out of your pocket to get that done. Text Larry to 989898. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. No obligation, only information. I love Birch Gold because they've got an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers. You can trust Birch Gold too. Text my name, Larry, 989898. Do it today.